Hello and namaste as well as good morning, good afternoon, good evening. On the behalf of Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement, I welcome you all to the International Young Scholar Summit 2020. I here extend a very warm welcome to all the participants, distinguished chair, Dr. Dhananjay Tripathi, fellow scholar and participants who have joined us through Zoom and are watching live on YouTube and Facebook. We are glad to witness your presence today. This international forum aims to bring together rigorous and erudite young scholars from all around the world over a single platform. The aim is to create an academic space to encourage young scholars and academicians from the field of international relations, political science, diplomacy, public policy, administration, and related subfields. The conference will be held for 3 days consecutively and will have 30 different sessions with two sessions running parallel throughout in white and green rooms. The conference will feature 275 scholars from 25 different countries who will be delivering their presentations and sharing their understanding on various topics with us. The session is streaming live on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, so please feel free to share it on your social media handle with hashtag IYSS2020. This is the 22nd session of the conference. To chair and moderate these sessions, it's a real pleasure to have with us Dr. Dhananjay Tripathi. Dr. Tripathi is serving as an assistant professor in the Department of International Relations in South Asian University, JNU. He also served as an associate research fellow at the Center of Strategic Study and Simulation, CS3 of United Service Institute of India from August 2010 to June 2011. He also was the India chapter coordinator at the organization called South Asian for Human Rights. His research interests mainly lie in the regionalism and borders, especially borders, South Asian and Europe, political economy and strategic issues of South Asia. He has delivered innumerable seminars, lectures, and workshops. He was also a great lecturer to guest lecturer to Foreign Service Institute under the MEA GOI. He was a board member in the Association of Borderland Studies. With further ado, I now request Dr. Tripathi to take the sessions forward. Dr. Tripathi, please.
Yeah, thank you, Krishna, for a very generous introduction. Thanks, Nice, for taking this excellent initiative of bringing young scholars to deliberate to discuss some very important themes of international relation. I'm sure this is a learning experience and a lot of things may emerge from such a discussion. And particularly at a time when we thought that the world is not going to discuss some of the important issues because of the COVID-19, how are we going to come together? But excellent initiative through this platform, Zoom. This is an excellent another session. I have followed some of the sessions in the past, and this session is dedicated to South Asia, which is very much required because we are South Asian. We should be knowing what are the important issues of South Asia, and I'm happy that many young scholars are today with us discussing number of important relevant themes that are considered as critical for South Asia. So without taking much of your time, I should go into the main discussions. I will request the participants to come in, and I have to say something on this theme, but I will keep it for the last. So as per the list, I'll follow the list, and I will let you know when 2 minutes are left. So let's say 15 minutes of presentation, and at the 13th minute I will raise the hand, and there's a system there in Zoom. So so let us start with Dr. Aparajita, who is an assistant professor at Patliputra University, India, and she is going to speak on a very important theme, that is Bangladesh in the WTO judicial body. So may I request Dr. Aparajita to start her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hello, everyone. I will be discussing on the topic Bangladesh in the WTO judicial body. First of all, I would introduce my topic in short. So, approaching the WTO dispute settlement system that is DSS, requires countries to have human, financial, legal, institutional, and stakeholder capacities. The countries, especially the least developed countries and the developing countries, face psychological barriers in approaching the DSS against other powerful developing and developed countries. The LDCs lack such capacities, and as a result, since 1995, only one LDC, that is Bangladesh, has been able to approach the WTO DSS against India when it imposed anti-dumping duties on the imports of its lead acid battery. So, it is important to understand what was the dispute. India had provided tariff concessions to lead acid battery under the South Asian Preferential Trade Agreement, that is SAFTA, in 1998, and the tariffs on lead acid battery from LDCs was reduced from 40% to 16%. This enhanced the exports of lead acid battery from Bangladesh to India. However, India imposed non-tariff barriers in the form of anti-dumping duties against the lead acid battery of Bangladesh. This demonstrates the real intention of the countries towards trade liberalization. At one hand, India provided tariff concessions to Bangladesh lead acid battery under SAFTA for increasing its exports to India, and on the other hand, it imposed non-tariff barriers to prevent such imports. So, the exports of lead acid battery from Bangladesh to India fell down to zero after the imposition of non-tariff barriers. As the application against the dumping of product can be filed by the domestic industries of the importing countries, the application was brought to the Director General of Anti-Dumping and Allied Duties, that is DGAD, by the Indian companies Excite India Limited and Amara Raja Battery Limited. They complained against Technolink and Techno companies that exported lead acid batteries from Bangladesh for dumping in Indian market. There were two investigations conducted against the dumping of lead acid battery from Bangladesh. After the first investigation, dumping of lead acid battery was negligible and it was less than 3% of the total imports. And it was in the second investigation that dumping of battery was found. As the dumping was not found after the first investigation by the DGAD, Bangladesh asked for the termination of the investigation. But the DGAD continued with the investigation of dumping and imposed anti-dumping duties on lead acid battery from Bangladesh. The issue was raised by Bangladeshi government to its Indian counterpart, but these meetings were unsuccessful. Several attempts were made by the Bangladeshi government to discuss the matter with the Indian government. Subsequently, India asked Bangladesh for price undertaking concerning the imports of lead acid battery. Bangladesh refused to give such undertaking as the acceptance of price undertaking would conform to the dumping of lead acid battery from Bangladesh. Now, Bangladesh had only an option to approach the WTO DSS as it is the body that solves trade disputes among member countries in the WTO. Now, I will discuss several constraints that countries face in approaching the DSS. Bangladesh, being an LDC, lacked trade capacity, that is the capacity required to know the political reaction of the respondents if the dispute is initiated. Legal capacity, the capacity to prepare, present, and litigate the dispute. Financial capacity, the fund needed to hire lawyers and approach the body. Institutional capacity and structure to manage the dispute in the body. The LDCs also face a psychological barrier in approaching the DSS against the developing and other developed countries as it fears the suspension of trade concession by more powerful countries that they receive at bilateral levels. There are several provisions like special and differential treatment, that is SNDT, provisions, and advisory center on WTO law, that is ACWL, to help these countries in overcoming financial and legal barriers, but these have not been able to play an effective role and have several shortcomings. Bangladesh overcame these barriers and approached the WTO DSS to to become the only LDC to approach the WTO dispute settlement system till present, that is 2020. Bangladesh approached the WTO DSS and requested for consultation. The consultation, it is the first stage of the DSS, and it approached it as a complainant in 2004 against India. The consultation was not successful and anti-dumping duties continued on Bangladesh-led acid battery. According to one of the officials of Bangladesh Tariff Commission, that is BTC, hardly anything concrete came out of the consultations. The Indian officials were rather casual during the session. Subsequently, Bangladesh requested for the establishment of the panel, that is the second stage of the dispute settlement system, with European Union as a third party. This came as a setback to India, as it never thought that Bangladesh, being an LDC, would request for the establishment of the panel, and it did not want to tarnish its image of being supporter of trade liberalization. Soon after, India withdrew its anti-dumping duties from imports of lead acid battery from Bangladesh and informed the dispute settlement body of mutually agreed solution between the two. So, it is important to analyze the factors that were favorable for Bangladesh in overcoming these barriers and approach the WTO dispute settlement body. An important role was played by the Rehma Farouz, that is the private industry that is the largest producer and exporter of battery in Bangladesh. The Advisory Center on WTO Law that provides legal assistance to developing and the LDCs at the one-tenth of the total cost of the dispute litigation, and Bangladesh Tariff Commission also played an important role that looks after trade matters in Bangladesh and the government of Bangladesh. Because without the government, you cannot initiate a dispute. All the dispute has to be taken through the government. A private industry can only lobby the government, and this role was beautifully played by Rehma Farouz. So, without the support of these institutions, it would not have been possible for an LDC like Bangladesh to approach the WTO dispute settlement system. Rehma Farouz lobbied the government, undertook to incur the litigation costs, and cooperated with the government during the litigation process. The public and private cooperation, it is a very important for the litigation process in the dispute settlement system of the WTO, which was demonstrated through this case. The undertaking to incur the litigation cost came as a relief to Bangladeshi government, as disputes came with high litigation costs, as the cost of hiring lawyers are very high and even higher in technical and factual cases. The psychological barrier was overcome with the help of Bangladesh Tariff Commission, Permanent Mission of Bangladesh in Geneva, and the Rehma Farouz. They convinced the government that initiating a dispute would not have any political repercussion by India on Bangladesh, as the government of Bangladesh feared. The political will is important for initiating the dispute, as already I have discussed that the dispute can only be initiated through the respective governments of the member countries. The ACWL, that is Advisory Center on WTO Law, also played an important role and provided Bangladesh with the legal capacity at one-tenth of the total litigation cost. To conclude, I would like to sum up that though international institutions like WTO dispute settlement system have been mainly dominated by developed countries and a few developing countries like Brazil, India, Indonesia, including India, there have been several instances when the voices of weaker countries have been heard against the powerful countries. The case of India's anti-dumping disputes against Bangladesh lead-acid battery is one such example. This dispute is of utmost importance because till date, no LDCs except Bangladesh have approached the WTO DSS. An important role was played by the private industry, the ACWL, that is Advisory Center on WTO Law, and Bangladesh Tariff Commission and in the dispute. Though all the LDCs and most of the developing countries are missing from the DSS platform, the role of WTO DSS cannot be undermined, as it provided a platform for an LDC like Bangladesh to challenge a powerful developing country like India. And with this process, the outcome came in favor of Bangladesh, and India it agreed to remove its anti-dumping duties from Bangladesh lead acid battery. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, you are free to ask me.
Thank you, Aparajita. Very informative. Number of issues you have brought, which has not been discussed generally. Now, I would like to move to our second participant, Sindhu Dinesh. Sindhu Dinesh is a research scholar at Manipal Academy of Higher Education, India, and will be speaking on another very relevant theme, that is deconstructing the geopolitical identity of South Asia, a critical geopolitical perspective. So, Sindhu, may I request you to start?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. I shall just share my screen. Greetings to everyone. I shall be presenting my research paper on deconstructing the identity of South Asia. I shall be using a critical geopolitics perspective. The format of my presentation is I shall share the overview, the significance, my research gap, objectives, methodology, and my research outcome. Synoptic overview of the research. South Asia is a region that appeals to the discipline of geopolitics because of its features like contentious borders, diverse geography, and others. What I shall be doing in this paper is I have looked at the classical geopolitics narratives that are there on the region of South Asia, such as they call it as an emerging major geopolitical region and so on. And I shall be applying the critical geopolitics perspective. Just this map of South Asia, where we have the geography, it has mountainous regions as well as valleys, plains, and water bodies around. The boundaries are largely so far contentious, many of them, and the population is one of the highest populated regions in the world. Ethnicity is diverse, and the political systems are also quite varied, and there is an increasing influence of outside power. This is an extremely relevant region in the 21st century geopolitics, and critical geopolitics is a narrative that emerged in 1980s, and it looks at the criticism and deconstructing of classical geopolitical narratives. So I shall be applying this perspective on the discourse that's there on South Asia. My objectives are, first, I shall present to you what are the classical geopolitical narratives on the region of South Asia. What do they say? And I shall explain some features of critical geopolitics and then try to apply this on the narratives. My methodology is largely used analytical research using a deductive approach. My analysis. So first, Alfred J. Mackinder, we would be familiar with his heartland theory. Where, according to Mackinder, the heartland is centered on the Eurasian region over here. He says that South Asia is part of the inner marginal crescent, and a little more of what he says, I shall move on to that eventually. Next, Alfred Theia Mahan, in his influence of sea power upon history, he talks about South Asia as a point of penetration for naval powers to enter the subcontinent and rule eventually. Nicholas Pikeman, in his work, in his 1944 work, Geography of Peace, he says that South Asia is part of this rimland, this blue region. He calls this region as an amphibious zone, which has features of, which has land features as well as maritime features, which is quite an advantageous location in the world to have this kind of a geographical feature. Moving on, Saul Bernard Cohen, in his theory, talks about how Saul Bernard Cohen talks about geostrategic realms. So according to him, a geostrategic realm is that part of the world which has functions and possesses features to have an influence on the globe, a global influence, as well as it meets the strategic needs of powers and other nations around it. He divides the world into three major geostrategic realms, one being the Eurasian continental heartland Russian realm, the other one is the Atlantic and Pacific economically advanced maritime realm, and the third is the continental and maritime features East Asia realm, which is led by China. And in his theory, he talks about how the region of South Asia does not quite fit into either of these three regions. It has an identity of its own, and he predicted that this would emerge as a geostrategic realm of its own, which would be led by India. One point I would like to note here is when he talks of South Asia, he does not include Afghanistan in his explanation. He puts Afghanistan to be part of the Eurasian continental realm. And the other theorist I would talk about is Robert Kaplan. Robert Kaplan, in his Revenge of Geography work, talks about he focuses on the influence of geography, and he says how the region of South Asia has largely artificial boundaries and the borders are quite porous. And he proposes a theory where eventually the countries in South Asia would form a larger identity of its own. Moving quickly, critical geopolitics is a narrative in the field of geopolitics that emerged in 1980, led by scholars like Salman Taibi, John Agnew, and others. It some major postulates of this discipline are that it emphasizes on a broader cultural phenomenon. They say that we cannot look at events based solely on geography and politics, but rather also look at the cultural and demographic aspects. And they argue that any event of geopolitics is a multilateral phenomenon and has plural causes than based on singularity of events. And the discipline also deliberates on boundary drawing practices, where they try to look at the origin of map drawing or the origin of boundaries in a region. And it is essentially a constructivist and a postmodernist narrative. Now, trying to apply this on the region, my paper is largely theoretical and I'm trying to see what would come out of this. So, revisiting this narrative, so Mackinder, in his 1944 Geographical Pivot of History, he says South Asia is part of the inner present. And in his later works, in his 1919 work, he tells that the region of South Asia, he clubs it with Southeast Asia, and he says that the region is a great lowland below the heartland. So there is a lot of heartland influence in the region. And in his next work, in his 1943 work, Round World and Winning of Peace, he tells that this region, because of its location, he predicted that after World War II, the Midland oceanic powers, that is largely the Western powers, would take over this region. That had been his prediction. And he had multiple reasons and causes for his explanation. However, I think history has shown otherwise. The region quite emerged on its own, in the sense that it was neither part of the heartland nor the Midland oceanic powers. It had an identity of its own because of non-alignment movement and other things like that. So there, that kind of that is the critical approach to his theory. And when Mahan talks about passage for sea power projection, as much as it is true that the British entered South Asia through the sea trade routes, but they could never quite extend it to take over the larger subcontinent in one sense. Somewhere he undermines the mountainous region that South Asia has, the Himalayas, which are kind of like a barrier which do not allow you to move beyond to go in. And also the region itself is so distinct and diverse that it's that the British Empire could not bring it all together under one specific whole. There were multiple power centers, and in that sense, South Asia is not really a point of penetration for to take over the subcontinent. And the other narrative by Nicholas Pikeman, that South Asia is part of Rimland. About this, he's right when he says that we have both our amphibious zones. However, I think South Asia took quite some time to realize its maritime advantages that it has. It's only come up now, along with the Indo-Pacific construct that has come up. The narrative is more strong about our maritime features and the sea lines of communication. And even organizations like BeamStack have only reinforced this idea. So that is something about that. And coming to Cohen's predictions about being an independent region, yes, it's extremely likely led by India. But however, there are also the other countries around India also have equal importance in their assertion, in their geopolitical assertion and their trajectory of foreign policy. So that is another. And when we come to Robert Kaplan's postulation, when he talks about unraveling of the artificial borders, I think it could be quite a far-fetched idea, because as much as it is true that the borders are porous, however, in spite of shared cultural and civilizational links between countries in South Asia, there has never been a time that they have all been politically united. So the idea that they could all come under one identity eventually seems to be far-fetched. And this is also evidenced by the failing of SAARC, which tried to reinforce the idea of South Asian region, but it couldn't quite hold together. So from that sense, this is how I have So in that sense, these narratives sort of can be deconstructed and looked at from various perspectives of how this could have occurred and what could come out of this. So some of my findings are, of course, it has both continental and maritime features, and it's an independent geostrategic realm. Critical geopolitics essentially tries to look at the influence of geography from the standpoint of contemporary reality and moves away from simplistic and agenda-driven narratives. South Asia is a region that's far more complex than being confined to continental and maritime narratives like how it is proposed in classical geopolitical theories, simply because there are countries in South Asia which do not have access to the water bodies, and there are also island countries which do not have access to the heartland, to the land features. Also, the region cannot be viewed in isolation because there is increasing role of outside powers, not just US and China, but even countries like Japan, Australia, the kind of aid that Australia has given to Maldives during the COVID-19. So there are many outside powers which have entered the region. And India, of course, India plays a major role in the politics of geopolitics, in the geopolitics of South Asia. However, there is a lot of changing dynamics in the neighborhood, and this has to be taken into importance, with each of the countries asserting themselves, having a unique identity of their own. That's another one. So, and also the region of South Asia, what comes out of this finding is, it is a distant but also very deeply divided region. With that, I would conclude my research. And these are my references. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting, Sindhu. I have just a couple of quick points for you. And one, that when you say cultural divide, I would also like to suggest you that you look at the political divide, whether political divide is more than the cultural divide in South Asia or not. You know, like Dhananjay Pandey has written about India-Pakistan partition, like how from one we became two and how the political narrative has changed over the period of time. So whenever we discuss South Asia, the political and a cultural part, one has to also look at whether it's a more political divide or it is just a cultural divide. Okay, so I will now request the third participant of this panel, Shraaddhashree Khadka. She's a student of Department of International Relations and Diplomacy, Tribhuvan University, Nepal. And Shraddha will be talking on Nepal as a small state between India and China, a very relevant theme in the contemporary time. So over to Shraaddhashree.
Hello everyone, Namaste. So first of all, thank you Nice and Pramod sir for this opportunity. So, and without delay, I'd like to start with my presentation. Trying to share my screen. Yeah. So I'll be talking about Nepal as a small state between India and China. So this is the overview of my presentation. I'll talk about what is a small state based on two approaches, qualitative and quantitative. Is Nepal a small state? I'll try to justify it. How and when did Nepal become a small state? And finally, I conclude. So what is a small state? There are many differences of opinion regarding the concept of small states. And if you look at the literatures, papers, articles related to the concept of small state, there you'll find a lack of definitional consensus. However, by observing the literature, it can be seen that all states can be grouped into two categories. First, qualitative and then quantitative, which is also referred as conceptual and material. So the qualitative factor, it is based on criteria such as the size of the population, size of the landmass, power, gross national product, GDP, etc. So some scholars, they set the parameters of population such as this population of a small state, it should be less than 10 million. And some, they have also said that GNP must be the parameter where a small state should have at least 1% of the world GNP. But among all the scholars, in present context, the most relevant one is that of David Vitals, because he talks about underdeveloped countries as well. And according to him, a small state should have a population of 10 to 15 million people for developed countries, and for developed countries, it should be 20 to 30 million people. So moving to qualitative factors, it can be divided into three sub-approaches, first being perceptual. So according to this approach, it is defined in the term of perception of the self and other. So it means that if the leaders of the states, they view themselves as small, and not just the leaders, but other states also view the state as small, then that state can be said to be a small state. So second is behavioral. In behavioral approach, it is concerned with the state's foreign policy practices. So small states, they usually exhibit the tendency to be limitedly involved in their world affairs because of their limited capacity, and they are more engaged in regional level, and they are the expert of international laws. So they usually stick to peace because they cannot afford war. And finally, the relational approach, it studies about those states existing in the sphere of influence of two competing major powers. Therefore, there is an asymmetrical relationship with other powers in terms of population, landmass, economy, defense budget, etc. So is Nepal a small state? Well, if you look at the David Vitale's quantitative approach that I mentioned earlier, it can be said that yes, Nepal is a small state because it is an underdeveloped country with a population of 20 to 30 million, and its GDP is less than 1% of the world GDP. Also, using perceptual approach, Nepal is viewed as small state by its neighbors, such as India and China, and its rulers, Nepal's rulers also, they have accepted that Nepal is a small state because it heavily relies on the aid of other states and institutions for its development. So using behavioral approach, Nepal practices a foreign policy of small states, such as non-alignment, neutrality, and it does not have the military might to be involved in the global stage. So it's foreign policy. I will explain it in the next slide. That will prove my point. So using a relational approach, there is an asymmetric nature of relation of Nepal with its two neighbors, India and China, in terms of population, landmass, defense, GDP, trade, etc. So therefore, it can be said that Nepal is a small state predominantly because of its neighborhood. So how and when did Nepal become a small state? Before jumping to the Nepal's small state strategy and its foreign policy behavior like bandwagoning, neutrality, non-alignment, I'd like to briefly talk about its history, how it transitioned from imperial grand strategy to small state diplomacy. So if you look at the history of Nepal, Nepal was, it was actually divided into numerous small principalities. And King Prithvinarayan Shah, who is also known as the architect of modern Nepal, he had expansionist. So he and his successors, they started annexing and unifying the principalities to make a greater Nepal. Shah's strategy was that it was not to offend or go into a war with Tibet in the north and powerful British East India Company in the south. However, keeping the major powers neutral while expanding the territory, it did not go well, and eventually Nepal collided with Tibet and British East India Company, in which Nepal lost a huge part of its territory. So it also failed to make alliances for its support, and as a result of its futile attempt to become a powerful state, it transitioned from imperial grand strategy to small state diplomacy. And from then on, you see, Nepal, it started applying small state foreign policy behavior for its survival, and bagning is one of such policy. So during Rana regime, Ranas, they aligned Nepal's foreign policy with that of British. And the reason why is because first, China was weakening during the First Opium War, and British East India Company, they were the global hegemon. And the second reason is also because of domestic politics. So Ranas, they wanted the regime to survive. So they needed the assistance of British East India Company. So the Rana rulers, they sent strong Nepalese armies and men to help British rulers suppress Sepoy mutiny, fight World War I, second on the side of the Allies. So they served in British units during the period of war. And in return, Nepal got its some part of its lost territory that was, lost in Anglo-Nepal War. But British East India Company, however, they kept Nepal under their sphere of influence, and Nepal government could only consult Indian government on the relations with Tibet, Sikkim, Bhutan, and China. So the next policy is a special relationship, and it is not as happy as it sounds because it is rather a contentious issue. Because if you look at the 1950s Treaty of Peace and Friendship, along with the secret letter exchange between the government of Nepal and India, there you'll see why. Because India has avoided, it has completely ignored Nepal's sovereignty, and it has been more concerned about its strategic and security interest in the Himalayas. So during the special relations, the presence of Indian representatives in the cabinet meetings of Nepalese government could be seen, and India's presence was there to nominate the prime ministers of Nepal. So it was violating Nepal's autonomy. So from 1955, to avoid this special relationship violating Nepal's autonomy, Nepal diversified its diplomatic ties. Or else, who knows, it could have, loss of control over its own foreign policy and could have ended like Sikkim. So the next is non-alignment and neutrality, which is also one of the major tool of small states for survival. And Nepal used this foreign policy tool to stay neutral and non-aligned during 1962 Indo-China War, Indo-Pakistan War of 1947, 65, and 71, and India-China standoff in 2017. So the next is a Zone of Peace proposal, which was introduced by King Birendra. So this proposal was actually made to circumvent the special relationship Nepal had with India. And it was made to signify that Nepal was no longer under India's defense umbrella and to guarantee that no foreign powers would use Nepalese soil as their military bases. So the next is opening up, which was not a good one as well. The unrestricted opening up, Nepal could not, the domestic industries of Nepal, it could not compete with multinational companies. So it resulted in more unemployment and income inequality. So 1966 civil war. So small states like Nepal, when they have internal wars or civil wars, they are very vulnerable to increased regional and international influence on its politics. So it is evidently seen that during those period, Western democratic diplomatic agencies were openly meddling in internal politics of Nepal. The concept of equiproximity, it is also one of the policy of small state to survive in the international domain. So instead of special relationship with India, the leaders of Nepal now they focus on the equiproximity as the concept of balancing an equal relationship with China and India for prosperity and development. So finally, the proposal for trilateral cooperation, it is a foreign policy tool for cooperation among India, China, and Nepal in terms of tourism, infrastructure, and hydroelectricity sector. So the rapid economic development of two Asian giants, they have given hope to small states like Nepal to aspire for the spillover effect. They are economically developed, so they can also help small neighboring countries like Nepal to support in its developmental journey. So Nepali leaders have been emphasizing time and again for this proposal. So Nepal wants to be the bridge of between India and China instead of being labeled as a buffer. So finally, moving to conclusion, small states can be defined by various approaches like quantitative and qualitative, and by various degrees. Nepal can be said to be a small state. So because if looking at the history, it has manifested small state strategies for its survival, such as bandwagoning, special relationship, diversification of its diplomatic relation, non-alignment, neutrality, balancing, trilateral cooperation, etc. So due to the structural scarcity that Nepal faces as a small state, it has to play the roles of soft balancing, bridging, bandwagoning while negotiating with its great powers. So with this, I'd like to conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Shraddhashree. Very interesting. Just one point I would like to add here. Like, I think that Nepal is an important state, more than a small state between India and China. It's an important state, and both India and China are realizing this fact. So also try to think from a Nepalese perspective, keeping Nepal as an important state. It's a geostrategically very important state. Okay, very interesting, Shraddha. And let me now go to the fourth presentation of the day. That is by Sunaina Kura. She's a student of University of Delhi, India, and she'll be speaking on another very interesting theme because she'll be speaking on diversity, a boon or a bane, a South Asian perspective. Diversity is something which is known about South Asia. It's a very diverse region. So let us listen what she has to say about it. So, yeah, please.
Yeah, let me share the screen first. I hope my screen is visible to all.
It is visible.
Yes, thank you. So I would like to speak about the diversity that South Asia has, and basically South Asia as a country, as a region is more diverse than any region possible, for an exception of Southeast Asia, which is also equally or greater than us diverse. And we are, South Asia consists of 8 nations, as we know, and these 8 are equally diverse, but India holds a lot of greater diversity over area and also population. So there are bewildering number of ethnic groups, and these ethnic groups again have multi-dimensional mixture of various linguistic, religious, sub-regional, cultural and tribal identities. And this region as a whole has been under the colonial powers, and colonial powers always tried or seek the route of divide and ruling the place, and hence have widened our diversities, which were not as wide as they were after the colonial times. And even after nearly 70 years of independence in almost all of the South Asian region, we still see that the wide in diversity hasn't reduced. From the local or the previous diversity issues or ethno-national issues that were there, and then come to the recent times. I'll go alphabetically. So in Afghanistan, since the arrival of USSR, then the USSR invasion and US involving itself, we have seen the insurgency rise in Taliban, and then the Pashto ethno-nationalism, which has led to the devastative devastation of Afghanistan. And this issue in the recent times, like in 2020, have come to a greater resolution with the peace talks between Afghan government and Taliban. But then we see that the diversity issues have been so deep that it would take another decade for them to come out of the issues that they have gone through. Bangladesh, on the other hand, has the Chittagong hill tracts, and Bangladesh in itself has very much high indigenous tribes like Juma, and the Bengali settlers and the state forces have tried to impose or construct a common national identity, ignoring the diversity of the country. This has led to a lot of human rights violations in the state of Bangladesh. Nepal also boasts a lot of diversity, and it boasts nearly one or three castes and various religions, and nearly 106 languages and many dialects. And over to this, for sure would have diversity issues. And one of the, we can say, pretty recent issues was the 2004 violence of thousands of Nepalis against the mosque and hundreds of Muslim-owned houses and businesses, which has led to a devastative state again. This was also to protest against the 12 Nepalis that have been killed in Iraq, but then again it has taken the communal turns because of the religious diversities. Pakistan has Balochistan, which is one of the largest province of Pakistan, and it is sparsely populated by Baloch community, and this community complains of the internal colonialization that has been taking place. Because this region is rich in resources, the Pakistani government has always owed to use these resources for its economic boast, but never has tended to development of this region, because of which they have termed it the internal colonialism. Sri Lanka, as we know that they always had the differences in Tamil and the Buddhist Sinhalese, and we know that there has been LTTE, and there has been rise and fall and separatist movement, and LTTE's fall is regarded to the further divisions in the Tamil community due to the caste variations that it has. It said that the minority caste that was part of the LTTE actually betrayed LTTE and supported the Sri Lankan military. Bhutan and Maldives, on the other hand, have seen many peaceful times because of their owing to their geographical and population size, which is very small, and these countries are also one of the happiest few of the happiest countries in the world. India, in particular, I would say, because India is large compared to any other South Asian country, and it has a wider diversity compared to any other South Asian country. So India homes nearly 1600 languages and various races and caste, religion, and caste is actually the I would say the most biggest concern owing to the diversity issues, and religion also is one of them, as we see the uh, Babri Masjid case and many others. And to name a few, I have listed four, but there are many. These four are the United Liberation Front of Assam and the wider Assam problem, which is the Bengali immigrant influx into Assam and the Assamese claim of regional patriotism, which has brought the diversity clashes in the region, and the Sikh separatism in Punjab, which was the Khalistan movement, which most of us know, but which this most probably won't come up again because of the importance that's been given to the Punjab as a region, and owing to its economic and importance that has taken up its presence in uh, the whole of India. And we have Gorkha land movement fighting. Is also one of the greatest issues, and Northeast as a whole has a lot of issues due to the fact or due to the reason that they feel that the center hasn't put enough efforts in the development of the Northeast region. And the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The state of Jammu and Kashmir is having its own set of issues. It is not just the national issue, but has also picked up to be an international issue involving Pakistan and India, now also China. And the recent Section 370 has increased problems of Jammu and Kashmir. So now that we have discussed all the past issues that have taken place, I would like to focus on the recent movements. And recently we have seen that though Afghanistan has come into peace terms or is trying to come into peace terms with Taliban, there has been a rise of conflicts especially towards the Sikh and the Hindu community. And then we have the Rohingyas issue, which Rohingyas are one of the most persecuted minorities in the world according to the United Nations. And though this issue originates in Myanmar, Bangladesh has felt a lot of impacts of Rohingyas as well as India to a certain extent. India, especially in the past 5 to 6 years, has seen a lot of rise in ethno-nationalist disturbances, beginning with the beef ban and ending with the dog meat ban, with revocation of Section 370 and CA and RC. And revocation of Section 370 led to the internal rise in issues, but also issues between Pakistan, China, and India. And CANRC has a slightly disheartened Bangladesh because it indirectly says that Bangladesh haven't been like able to provide enough for their the further influx of refugees that come from Bangladesh. And owing to the beef ban and dog meat ban, this is a very personal thing to a human. The vegetation or the nutrition a person takes is very personal, and India has never gotten into personal matters. We have a separate jurisdiction for personal cases also. But then this selective banning of food has also selectively excluded the community. And uh, with the recent ban on the dog meat, we have seen a rise in the Twitter tweets saying that uh, Northeast has now become complete or full part of India with the ban of dog meat, which is actually very disheartening because Northeast has always been a part of India. And this has again brought a divide in the racial disturbances. Though we might not see this in the national television or anywhere else, but it is very much prevalent if you actually go to the depths of it and see how people of Northeast have been feeling about this ban. They have felt that now it's the same turn of colonialism that had happened back in time, because the Britishers thought the Northeast were barbaric and tried to convert them or try to bring in changes, and the same is being done by mainland India or Northeast. So yeah, as I said earlier, there's diversity issues are not just particular to the nations, but have also become an international issue, and there have been a lot of rise in human rights violations also. Now coming to the main question and my title also, is diversity a boon or a bane? You might say it is always a boon. Why would a diversity be bane? Yes, of course, diversity is never a bane, it's a boon. But then how tolerant are we to this diversity is the larger question. We take diversity for the political gains or economic gains, but have never accepted them as equals in our society. So this not acceptance of them as equals in society, or the fact that we use the term them and us, is also very disheartening. Then now in present times, when we have the notion of international citizenship with citizenship with the rise of globalization, how far is this diversity a national threat alone? And yes, I would like to conclude with that, and I would leave the topic for you to ponder upon. And diversity is not something everyone talks about, and I would say that it's something that we are supposed to talk, because many human rights violations have roots to diversity, pluralism. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunaina. I think a very important topic. We should be discussing more about South Asian diversity from a critical perspective. Uh, uh, Now, I would like to invite the fifth panelist, Shonit Nayan. Shonit is a research associate at Indian Institute of Public Administration and will be speaking on traces of pandemic federalism across popular federal nations of SAARC, scanning the COVID-19 bailout packages. Yes, Shonit.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yeah.
First of all, thank you so much to Chairperson Dr. Dhananjay Tripathi sir for inviting me. And again, thank you Dr. Pramod Jaiswal sir and entire NICE team to allow me to speak on this important platform. So my topic will be pandemic federalism, and particularly it is important in SAARC because three most important federal nations of SAARC is that India, Nepal and Pakistan. So from next 10 minutes, I am going to speak on these topics. So before that, sir, it's already shared by, should I share my screen? Okay. So first of all, before starting the presentation, it is very important to understand that what is the federalism, and again, what is pandemic federalism. So federalism is nothing but just a shared system of government which combines a general government. General government means like it may be called a central government or federal government or union or national. So these are all are synonymical terms with regional government, that is sub-national, provincial, local government, and that power sharing framework and mechanism is clearly defined in the constitution or any particular legislation. So these are the fundamentals of calling any country or any government as federal. And now coming to the pandemic federalism. So contagion or pandemic federalism is nothing but a shared framework, different layers of government, particularly in the time of any emergency. For example, this time COVID is a global health issue. So this is basically a pandemic federalism, and it is quite important. Next slide, sir. Sir, could you please next slide?
Just a sec, little technical problem. I will just a sec.
Sir, I will share my screen if not an issue.
I'll share just a sec.
So starting with I have made a comparative perspective of federalism in these three countries. So starting with India, all of us know that India is a federal parliamentary democracy having 28 states and 8 union territories and having 3 layers of government. So we have union government, state government and local government after that 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment. And again, what are the constitution article and parts which deals with our federal structure? So part 11 and the 7th schedule of our constitution deals with the 3 constitutional lists. Those lists are union list, state list and concurrent list. So from name it is clear that there are 97 matters or subjects in union list upon the union government has power to legislate laws on those topics. And moving to the state list, so a state or provincial governments have power to enact laws on that. And the second, then third one is concurrent list. Both government have powers to enact laws on that. And in our federal structure, concurrent residual power lies with the center. So particularly this public health lies in the state list. Because of this, pandemic federalism is quite important in the time of COVID, because union government has to make legislation and that has to be shared with provincial government and local government. So this is quite important. And again, there are several bodies in our country which maintains the federal structure. So the Article 280 talks about the Finance Commission, which transfer fund to states from the union pool of divisible taxes. And second one is Interstate Council that is mentioned in Article 263. And recently in 2016, we have GST Council, which talks about the sharing of goods and services taxes between the union and states. So it is also an important body which maintains the federal structure of India. And now moving to our neighbors Nepal. So all of us know that Nepal has enacted its constitution in 2015, and it is now called as Federal Democratic Republic of Nepal, and it is having 3 layers of government as in the constitution of the Nepal. In Article 56, it is written that we have 3 layers of government. So currently in Nepal there is a federal government, then 7 state governments and 753 units of local government. And particularly entering into the constitution, so Article 232 of the constitution talks about the cooperation, coexistence and coordination among these 3 layers of government in Nepal. And now moving to Pakistan. Pakistan is also having federal parliamentary republic, which consists of 4 provinces, 1 federal capital, 2 self-governed administrative territories and 1 semi-autonomous federally administered tribal area. And now, as all of us know that every countries have announced COVID bailouts because COVID is not just a public health emergency, it is also economic crisis or corona financial crisis. So every countries have announced their COVID bailout package. So as far as India is concerned, so first COVID case has been reported in India on 24th. First case reported on 30th January 2020, and our Prime Minister has announced a nationwide lockdown on 24th March. And as far as the COVID bailouts have concerned, so on 12th May, we have announced that self-reliant or so-called in Hindi Atmanirbhar package, which is approximately 10% of India GDP. And if on comparative perspective, so India is the 5th largest global economics bailouts announcer after Japan, United States, Sweden and Germany. So it is around in Indian rupees like 20 lakhs 57,053 crores. And it has been announced in 5 tranches. Means like after the like a speech of Prime Minister, our Union Finance Minister has announced it between the 13 to 17 May on different sectors of economy like MSME, agriculture. So now moving to the Nepal. So in Nepal, the first COVID case was detected on 23rd January 2020, and national lockdown was imposed in end March and was valid till July 22. As far as fiscal response or policy response has been concerned by Nepalese government, so on March 30, Nepal government has announced like various measures which are like related to health spending, like additional insurance coverage to those health professional or medical professional who are like saving the COVID patient or like involved in that COVID services. And again, they have like made arrangements for like elimination of duty on certain medical items like mask, ventilators, this kind of thing. They have also made arrangement for quarantine center. Then they have extended the tax filing deadline. Also, they have distributed the food ration or subsidized utility bills. So these are the measures taken on or announced on March 30 in Nepal. And now moving to Pakistan. So first COVID case was detected on 26 February 2020, and national lockdown was started on 27 March. And again, since mid-April, they have like gradually started reopening their economy, and first of all, they made that a standard operating procedure for reopening their low-risk industries and small retail shops. And starting from August 10, they have lifted lockdown, like nationwide lockdowns in Pakistan, and they have started like full-fledged economic activity with provision of that standard operating procedures. Now, as far as like decoding the bailouts is concerned, as far like it is quite important for Indian government to support businesses, particularly which are running in fiscal environment, because they are having a shutdown, particularly airline industries and some businesses. 4.9% of GDP of that Atmanirbhar package was given to like as a credit input to businesses and other business firms. And as far as like this can be divided in 2 parts, that is direct spending. So direct spending can be contributed to food, that LPG cylinder, then direct benefit transfer to low income household, then health workers insurance wages, and then employment assistance to low wage workers. And Indian government had additionally announced 150 billion Indian rupees, like that is contributed like 0.1% of GDP for health related infrastructures. Again, federal government had announced credit supports to businesses, poor household, peasants, and migrant workers, because all of us know that India's migrant crisis is one of the worst crises, particularly after our partition. So in that, government has spent 1.6% of our GDP. And again, Nepal government has on moving to Nepal. So on 26th April, government of Nepal have given preference to informal sector workers, particularly to those who lost their jobs in COVID, and they will be given preference in public works department, or like their wages will be like 25% of local daily wages. And again, on 28th of May, Nepal has announced its budget for 2020 and 21 financial year. So like while decoding this budget, there are several provisions, there are several arrangements which have been done in the wake of COVID or in the backdrop of this COVID crisis. So as far as social security measures is concerned, so they have announced 67.50 billions Nepalese rupees for social security schemes and measures. And again, then 50% subsidy on insurance premium. So it's cost them like 13.96 billion Nepalese rupees. Then they have like made arrangement for immediate COVID treatment tools, that is 6 billion rupees. And again, they have made arrangement for 6,000 health volunteers, like 2.23 billion Nepalese rupees. Actually, I have made this comparison basis on tabular basis so that it can be understandable and more comprehensive. And as far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan has announced like Pakistani rupees amount of 1.2 trillion on 24th March to like eliminate or like to deal with this COVID-19 crisis. So if we decode that particular package, so first of all, like they have also eliminated the import duty on emergency health equipment. So again, they have like made direct cash transfer, which contribute to like Pakistani rupees 75 billion and among 6.2 million daily wage workers and 12 million low income families. And again, they have made arrangement for accelerated tax refund to export sectors. And as far as like MSME and agriculture sector is concerned, so federal government of Pakistan has made arrangement of 100 billion Pakistani rupees for that particular sector. And as far as that Atmanirbhar package is concerned, so like all of us know that India's power discoms are going into like debt or facing many issues. So they are having like 0.5% of that bailout package. Agriculture is specific like 0.7%, and in addition to that, our government has also supported medium scale, medium enterprises and non-banking financial companies. As far as like Indian states are concerned, so various states have like also made arrangement and announced package based upon the spread of COVID. Like states like Kerala, they have performed very well in this kind of thing because their local government health infrastructure is quite brilliant, and even that European countries had praised about those local infrastructure. In addition to this, our bodies like Union Finance Commission, GST Council, they have also like taken a special meetings in the wake of COVID-19 in order to compensate the local government as well as the state government. And in Nepal, like Nepal government has like spent 1 billion Nepali rupees on skill development or like jobs which are lost during training time. And again, they have also made arrangement for insurance to all those workers up to maximum limit of 5 lakhs Nepalese rupees for those involved in this.
Shonit, please conclude.
Before that concluding that COVID-19 has like given a threat to pandemic federalism because what are the threats which have been given to pandemic? So first of all, like we need to have developed an integrated disaster management and integrated risk management after this pandemic. Again, there is like a cascading effect of this COVID-19. So there can be food riots in like SAARC. So we have to deal with this. Again, there is like trend have started in reverse migration. So we have to like secure our pandemic federalism, all these 3 countries. So we can develop a new mechanism and we can make a national migration policy on the consensus base. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Shonit. We will move to next participant, that is Padmaraj Jain. Padmaraj is the assistant professor at Vives Arts and Commerce College, India, and will be speaking on what SAARC can learn from ASEAN. Yes, Dr. Padmaraj.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Padmaraj sir is not in the group.
Padmaraj is not in the group?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then we'll move to the next name, that is Hian Than Sui. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Is a student from University of Yangon, Myanmar. Will be speaking on will Southeast Asia becomes a focal point of new Cold War. So over to you, Hian.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hian Than Sui from Myanmar, and the topic is about South Asia, and is it a focal point of new Cold War, which I will explain in my presentation. So I will present it in 3 segments, 3 parts. The first one is Cold War and the new Cold War, and the second one is South Asia in this new Cold War, and finally I will provide my conclusion. So first of all, I will present on the Cold War and the new Cold War. Because of the time limit, I will brief my brief this segment very shortly. As everyone may know, the Cold War was a period of international tension between the United States and Soviet Union after World War II between 1945 and 1991. It was mainly ideological based competition between 2 blocs, mainly capitalism and communism, competition between these 2 ideologies. And it officially ended with Soviet Union collapse, and it resulted in the rise of non-state actors and globalization and triumph of liberal democracy and market economy around the world. So this was the Cold War, and this is a new Cold War that people have started to talk about lately. Many people have speculated about a new Cold War starting in recent years, but it has become more pronounced this year. Competition between the United States and China is becoming more intense, recently intensified by this COVID-19 pandemic efforts. So the clearest signal was on July 23, when U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made a hostile speech against China. He used several as-versus-then narrative mentioning China, like free nations on one hand and the communist tyranny, communist China on the other. He used several distinctions to distinguish each other and making China the enemy. And he even proposed an alliance of democracies to resist China expansion. So this speech signal a change, signal a new era, because it was similar in most ways to Truman Doctrine, the speech that signaled the Cold War in the past. China has responded by urging other countries not to join this US offensive about alliance of democracy against China. China has insisted other countries not to join US. And even China Foreign Minister Wang Yi has used the term several times, like US is pushing for a new core. Please don't join US in this new core. He has used the term several times. So the new core is already happening, can be seen as already happening. And I will also brief here. There are many differences. First of all, that's the main reason. It was ideologically motivated in the past, and now it's more about geopolitical ambitions, about expansion of the country powers, and also significant changes in the international order in past decades, like the rise of the rest apart from the Western countries like India and many other rising states. Russia, they have also rose apart from the West. And the rise of another model, authoritarian capitalism, as an alternative to liberal democracy, mainly espoused by China and Russia. And the economy is also very different, because in the Cold War, the two blocs rarely interact on economic matters, but now it's an extremely interrelated economy, even between the US and the China, the two rivals. There are many technology changes, and the role of media, non-state actors, has also become more pronounced in these years. But the most important one that I will focus is the focal point, which was Europe in the Cold War. The focal point is a place where the competition, the rivalry between the two great powers is at its highest, where the competition is the most intense politically, whether politically, economically, or anything else. So what's the focal point for this new core? And my opinion is that Southeast Asia is going to be the focal point in this new core. And I have claimed this based on the real events that happened not so long ago. At the same time as Pompeo's speech, U.S. Embassy in the region launched a social media offensive, U.S. Embassy in Southeast Asia. They mentioned China harmful businesses in hot stakes, South China Sea aggression, and accused China of undermining sovereignty. All of them attacked, all of these embassies' speech or reports attacked China, whether implicitly or explicitly in South Asia or embassy. So there was a war of words between the two great powers, and it was the most intense in Myanmar, where the China and the US has exchanged really fierce and hostile words. Their embassy exchange in Myanmar. So this is a good signal. This is a good even that signal. The South Asia, the importance of South Asia as a focal point in this coming new core, because this new divide is clear in the region as a whole. So why South Asia? Why is it going to be important? Why is it the focal point? Why will it be focal point? Because there are two main reasons. There are many other reasons, but I will cite two here. The first one is the strategic location. As you can see, the South Asia as a region is very close to China, like China backyard. So it's very essential for China, and at the same time, it's also important for US to contain against China. And also the location is geographically, it is close to South China Sea, which I will explain in next slide. And also economic importance, there's a lot of economic potential in the region. It's one of the fastest growing regions in the world. And it has a vast working age population, richness in resources. So both economically and geographically, it is very indispensable to any superpower that in this upcoming new core. So South China Sea, I won't go for far detail here, but it's one of the most serious flashpoint, as all of you may know, and it will become one of the potential point to conflict in upcoming years, likely. So it's very important for US to ward off China expansion. For China, the South China Sea is an essential part of the five Iceland chains of defense. It has both significant resources in terms of natural gas, oil, and fish stock. And how does it relate to South Asia importance as a focal point? Because 4 of the 6 claimants on the South China Sea are from South Asia. And Indonesia, despite not being a claimant on the South China Sea, is also a party involved in this dispute. So about half of the South Asian states are involved in this issue. And also China's assertiveness over this issue is militarization of island and its harmful activities to provoke responses. And at the same time, US and allies' freedom of navigation operations are igniting the region potential risk for potential for conflict. So South Asia is becoming more and more at high risk of being embroiled in a potential conflict in this area in the upcoming years. So what has South Asia position been mostly? South Asia has a history of external powers interference. In the past, there was about thousands of years ago, there was China invasion, and in the colonization period, there was European colonization, and in the Cold War, there were a number of Cold War politics playing in the region with insurgency, in the form of insurgency, coups, so many things, and proxy wars. So South Asia has a large history of external power interference. However, after the Cold War, it has been able to establish a generally non-aligned and independent position. It has been able to do this through the establishment of ASEAN and deliberate strategic ambiguity to consolidate this independent, non-aligned, and neutral position. But the changing this new Cold War conditions is giving pressures to the region to choose one side, as evident in Pompeo's speech and in China insistent on other countries, whether through the state media or their officials' remarks. So its importance is increasing, and its importance as focal point is increasing. It's also under pressure to choose one side. So this will be my conclusion for this. These changing conditions, the pressures to choose one side and discard the other from the external powers, are harming the region unity. This was the first, there was this case in the 2012 ASEAN Summit, where the member states failed to reach an agreement. Because they couldn't reach an agreement.
So I think that we should move to the next speaker. In fact, he had already made most of the points. He was on a conclusion and made all the points that was in his paper. So, so let us now move to another participant, that is Abhay Pratap Singh. Abhay is a student from Banaras Hindu University, India, and he will be speaking on global governance in a post-COVID-19 world with a special reference to SAARC countries. Yes, Abhay.
Sir, Abhay is not present here. I think we should move to next speaker.
Abhay is not present?
Not,
okay.
Sir.
Hello,
the last...
can you hear me?
Yes, Ian, you would like to conclude? Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I would like to conclude. Yeah,
please
I'm back.
Please do.
Okay. So could you enable screen sharing? Here is mentioned that the host disable screen sharing. Can you enable screen sharing?
Wait. We'll make you co-host.
Yes, sir. I'll help you out with that. Just a second. I'll have to call Pramod sir regarding this. Would you just give me a second for that, because he'll have to be made the co-host once again. So please make so now you'll be able to share your screen. You have been made the co-host. Thank you for the time.
Okay. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So the changing conditions are harming the region unity, as I said, and that it has become more and more important for the region to withstand pressures. These pressures to divide the camp and avoid being entangled in this great power rivalry between US and China. And as an institutional face of the region, ASEAN will need to remain firm on its neutral and independent position that it has done in the last decades. And the region as a whole should continue pushing for peaceful dialogue and multilateral solutions, not to repeat the mistakes of a divided South Asia in the past, in the Kura, in the colonization period. They should aim for peaceful settlement of whether South China Sea or other issues, and multilateral solutions, promote multilateral solution. However, because of these changing conditions, not too many choices remain for the region, and only enmeshment, having good relations, with all the party involved, whether China, Russia, US, without resorting to only one side. Engaging with all the partner remains the only reasonable and preferable approach for the region, whether in terms of security or economic or whatever benefits. So only enmeshment remains the reasonable approach for the region. However, as a focal point, the atmosphere will be harder for the region as a whole to retain its neutral and independent position in the face of these hard times. That's all for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let us now move to the last speaker of this panel, that is Vinod Kumar. Vinod Kumar is a research scholar at Mohanlal Sukhadia University, India. and he will be speaking on boundary dispute between India and Pakistan and its impact on SAARC, a very important topic. So, over
Yes,
to
sir.
you. Yes.
Yes, sir. I share my property.
Vinod, you can continue now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Please
Okay,
start.
okay. First of all, thank you, Dr. Dhananjay sir, for inviting me, and a special thank for all NIS team to giving opportunity me. My topic is boundary dispute between India and Pakistan and its impact on SAARC. How uh, border dispute between India and Pakistan impact on SAARC relation and the impact on regional peace in the Southern Asia. I read my PPT about the boundary dispute between India and Pakistan. Boundary are the territorial dispute often stem from marital and cultural claim. Sometimes they may also emerge a result of fundamental change in domestic and international environment. In certain circumstances, boundary and territorial dispute may even evolve into geopolitical game of big power rivalry and competition. The boundary is a geopolitical entity that divide two different country, state, city, and the area. India and Pakistan have the political and cultural boundary, which divide two different nations, two different religion, and different ethnicity and society. India share India share uh, three to uh, three kilometer long boundary with Bangladesh, with Pakistan. That border run along the state of uh, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, north to south. According to the World Bank population graph 2018, both countries share more than 20% of population of the world. If we talk about background of the dispute, then we understand how the dispute between the both country are emerged, and what is the reason behind the dispute. What is the reason behind the dispute? After the end of British rule, British India was parted into two countries, India and Pakistan. The division was based on Hindu and Muslim, based on religion, majority, and religion, which caused mass migration for those that did not live in the majority. The thousands of people were killed in the criminal violence, resulting in a atmosphere of hostility that has remained for decades. The Jammu and Kashmir region have been disputed since partition in 1947, with the Pakistan and India both claim ownership on it. Both country claim on it. Both country claim on it. Uh, Kashmir turn into India for military assistance, and when the Pakistan attack to Kashmir in 1947, Kashmir turned to India for military assistance and signed the instrument of accession. A series of clashes between India and Pakistan border, 1965, 1967, 1969, during in Kargil war, when the India launched air strike against Pakistani force that had entered Indian administered Jammu and Kashmir. Three major full war scale between India and Pakistan held in 1965, 71, and 99. After that, 26/11, the tension between India and Pakistan reached in peak level that put several impact on regional peace in South Asia. There are there are three and fourth boundary area where the both country claim each other. These territory are these boundary sector are Siachen Glacier, Jammu and Kashmir, SAARC Creek, and Salvatore Rise. Salvatore Rise is a part of Karakoram range in the Jammu Kashmir. The northern boundary of the Jammu Kashmir. It is a part of Siachen Glacier. The range also become disputed after India control on Siachen Glacier. They are claimed as part of Jammu and Kashmir Union Territory by India and as part of Gilgit-Baltistan by the Pakistan. Siachen Glacier is another important boundary dispute between India and Pakistan. In the Siachen Glacier area, boundary demarcated by the Karachi Agreement 1949 that did not specify who had control over Siachen. Both countries claim on the glacier because it is a very important geostrategic location, geopolitical location. SAARC Creek is another important boundary situated in South Red Creek. It is another important disputed area between India and Pakistan located South Red Creek area. It is a 96-kilometer long strip of water dispute between India and Pakistan in the run of Kutch marshland. Pakistan claimed the line of follow the eastern shore of the estuary, which estuary claim a center line. The international boundary in the circuit area and the international line between the India and Pakistan have not been demarcated. Jammu and Kashmir, after the 1949 clash, half of Jammu Kashmir occupied by Pakistan. Pakistan is in the illegal and forcible occupation of approximate 78,000 square kilometers of Indian territory in Kashmir because Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir signed on instrument of accession and merged in India. It is the main dispute between India and Pakistan. Both nations claim on Jammu and Kashmir respectively. Role of SAARC. If we talk about the role of SAARC, what is the role in the SAARC in the Asia and what is the impact, aid, welfare, mutual assistance in various fields. Then we are role of SAARC. SAARC is a regional intergovernmental organization, the geopolitical union of the South Asia country, which provide a platform for the people of SAARC to work together in a spirit of friendship and neighborhood. Aim of the making of South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation is to promote the welfare of the people and improve the living standard all the country through the accelerate economic and growth, social progress, and mutual development in the region. If we talk about the impact, in the recently time, SAARC faced several problems due to the India and Pakistan boundary dispute and dispute between India and Pakistan is one of the main reason that SAARC is not prospering and responding properly. India-Pakistan border dispute and the accompanies mistrust and suspension between the have greatly harmed the process of regional cooperation in this region. India time to time separate. India and Pakistan both time to time separate and distance maintained from SAARC due to the boundary and cross-border terrorism. The kind of the condition weak SAARC function because both nations play a dominant role in South Asia. SAARC failure to take a bilateral economic, social, political boundary and water dispute has been attributed as one of the major reasons for the failure of regional cooperation, and Pakistan allied have accused India to being the main culprit for this condition. All countries of SAARC having big economic interest and expansion for regional cooperation, but it does not have good progress in the achieving the SAARC objective time to time. Boundary and political tension between India and Pakistan shake the objective of SAARC. If India and Pakistan continue to be such a hindrance to its regional leadership and political revival, all countries will be have to find another option. If we talk about the future perspective of SAARC and the India-Pakistan boundary dispute, then we found the future of SAARC will depend on the activeness and trust of all participation. India play an important role due to the close relation with all countries, but this is not possible due to regional dispute with Pakistan. India tried to shake its regional leadership. Pakistan is compulsion to revive its diplomatic standing, and other SAARC member states continue commitment to the grouping keep the possibility of SAARC resurgence alive. The both countries come together for its political and time to time both countries come closer for its political and economic benefit, and it also serve as a key platform for melt the ice between Pakistan and India in the past. In the fourth summit of the SAARC that brought an Indian leader to Pakistan after the 28 years in 1988. The conclusion: SAARC is a regional cooperation and international intergovernmental organization. So both countries should try to get mutual benefit from the cooperation of each other. India has a clear stand for regional and new regional. India has a clear stand for SAARC, and the new government of India has taken a several important and positive steps to improve relations with the SAARC nation. Government of India proposal to set up a SAARC bank and the SAARC satellite. It is a good initiative for economic growth and stability. Economic growth and regional security. Both the countries should understand that their dispute should not affect the dignity of the organization. It is my side. Thank you to all, and again I thank you, Dr. Dhananjay Tripathi and a team of and this and thank you.
Thank you, Vinod. Interesting paper. So we have very less time, I think just 15 minutes. So I would not like to go into concluding all the papers. I wanted to be, but due to the lack of time, it is not possible. Or I can just say in a one sentence that all papers are excellent, very important, thought-provoking, and there is a scope to build on these papers. So thank you, everyone. May I now open the floor for Q&A. If there is any questions, please type it on the text box. I will, and please name the panelist to whom the question is directed. We have 10 minutes, so please do it fast. Just 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, anyone, any questions? No questions? In fact, I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to ask right now. No questions? So let me summarize the panel. I think some very important 7 papers that are presented here. Dr. Aparajita has brought the role of Bangladesh and how Bangladesh has making use of WTO. Sindhu Dinesh, again a very important theoretical paper. She talks about the deconstructing geopolitical identity of South Asia. I think this paper can be developed into a good article, academic article. It has a theoretical background. The empirical part has to be worked on more, Sindhu. So that is my suggestion. Shraaddhashree Khadka, a very insightful paper. She talked about the small state diplomacy. This is now being talked a lot about in the context of India, Pakistan, India, China, and Nepal. So I think also there is a lot of scope in this paper. Sunaina, on a diversity, yes, a very important theme for every South Asian scholar to look at the diversity. And she has presented, she has got a number of issues on the table. My suggestion is that she can take just a couple of issues or maybe 1 or 2 country in a comparative study and can develop this paper further. Excellent paper. Sunaina, I enjoyed it. Shonit, a very thought-provoking paper, a very insightful, a comparative thing. It is not easy to do a comparative study in when the issue is already under discussion or the things are going on. A lot of things are unfolding on everyday basis. So very good paper, and I can see that it can also be, it has a potential and it can draw a lot of attention if you go for publishing this paper. Yeah, and I think let me congratulate you for bringing a very important theme to this panel in terms of how Southeast Asia becoming a new focal point of a new Cold War. A lot has been discussed nowadays about what sort of role Southeast Asia is going to play in the future, building the kind of a rivalry that we are witnessing right now is building up between China and US. Thank you for bringing some perspective from the region. I enjoyed your presentation. Vinod, borders and boundaries I follow. It is one of my research interests. I enjoyed your paper, and I think again there's a lot of information in this paper. The paper need to be more analytical, and you also have to look that whether SAARC is in the position to play some role into this or not, because SAARC, the official position is not to interfere into the bilateral issues between the countries. So whether SAARC or some other medium may be required for this. But yeah, India, Pakistan today, tomorrow, or maybe 10 years from now have to rethink on all these issues. This is important. How and when, I don't have any answer as of now. My best wishes to all the young scholars, and hope to see that you will keep publishing, you will keep doing well in future, and we will keep interacting. And I also wish that NICE will keep providing us platform to interact, to further analyze number of these issues in future. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, NICE.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you, speakers. Krishna, please proceed with the word of thanks.
Okay. Are you listening to me now? Am I audible?
Yes, Krishna.
Go forward.
Okay, let me give you the vote of thanks. Okay, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the 22nd session. It is my honor to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of NIIC NIS to all who have graced us with their presence and contributed their parts to make this event a resounding success. First of all, we would like to express our profuse gratitude and sincere thanks to Dr. Tripathi for agreeing to moderate the session. Our sincere thanks goes to all those who are the speaker for being part, who are our speakers for being part of the event and delivering such comprehensive and convincing presentations. We are really pleased to have all the speakers with us here today. We would like to acknowledge our gratitude to our friends from the diplomatic community, experts, academia, media, and different organizations. Finally, I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for our audience who participated in the webinar and those who are watching us live on YouTube channel. Thank you for your valuable time and attention for making this session productive with your questions. We are truly privileged to have you all with us today and hope to stay connected with you in the future as well. It's really been a pleasure. Also, do join us in our next session. Thank you very much.